What if the world did not begin with science, but with story? What if thunder was not weather, but a god's anger? What if the sea was not water, but the breath of something ancient and watching? Long before empires, long before philosophy, before Rome, before even history itself was written, there were myths. And these myths were not whispers. They were the foundation of a civilization. They shaped warriors, inspired poets, explained suffering, defined love, and dared to answer the oldest human question: why? This is the story of gods who overthrew their fathers, of monsters born from rage, of heroes who defied destiny, of a war that burned a city to ash, and of the fragile line between divine power and human weakness. This is the entire story of Greek mythology, from chaos to the fall of heroes and beyond. Before the world had mountains, before the seas had tides, before the sun burned in the sky, there was nothing. Not darkness, not light, not time. Only chaos. An endless, silent void stretching beyond imagination. No sound, no movement, no beginning, and no end. And then, something shifted. From the emptiness emerged Gaia, the earth, vast and fertile, the first solid presence in existence. She spread herself wide, becoming soil and stone, valley and cliff. She was foundation. She was stability. She was life waiting to happen. Above her rose Uranus, the sky, glittering with stars, immense and infinite. He arched over Gaia, covering her like a shimmering crown. Together, earth and sky became the first divine union. And from their embrace came the Titans, massive primordial beings who embodied the forces of nature itself. Oceanus, whose waters circled the world. Hyperion, the blazing light. Themis, divine law. Mnemosyne, memory. And last among them, yet most cunning, was Cronus. But Gaia also bore children Uranus feared, the Cyclopes, one-eyed giants of raw power, and the Hecatoncheires, monstrous beings with 50 heads and 100 hands. Uranus saw their strength and trembled. Instead of honoring them, he cast them deep into Gaia's body, imprisoning them in the darkness of the earth. Gaia cried out in agony. The weight of her children trapped within her was unbearable. She pleaded with her Titan sons to rise against their father. All refused. All except Cronus. Gaia crafted a sickle from indestructible stone and placed it in his hands. And one night, when Uranus descended to lie upon the earth, Cronus struck. The blade flashed, the sky split, and with one violent motion, Cronus overthrew his father. Blood fell upon Gaia, and from it rose new beings. The Furies, born of vengeance. The giants, and spirits of unrest that would echo through eternity. The age of Uranus was over. The age of Cronus had begun. Cronus crowned himself ruler of the cosmos. He freed his Titan siblings and took his sister Rhea as queen. Under their reign, the world entered what later poets would call the Golden Age. Humans lived without suffering. The earth gave freely. There was no hunger, no war, no death. But power never rests easily in the hands of those who seized it through violence. For a prophecy came to Cronus, a whisper carried by fate itself. Just as he had overthrown his father, so too would one of his children overthrow him. Fear consumed him. When Rhea bore their first child, Hestia, Cronus took the infant gently into his hands and swallowed her whole. Rhea screamed, but he devoured each child as they were born. Demeter, Hera, Hades, Poseidon, one by one, alive, trapped inside him. Rhea's grief turned to desperation. When she became pregnant again, she fled to the island of Crete. Hidden in a cave, she gave birth to her youngest son, Zeus. To deceive Cronus, she wrapped a stone in cloth and presented it as the newborn. Without suspicion, Cronus swallowed it, and the true child of destiny grew in secret. Nymphs fed him milk from the goat Amalthea. Warriors clashed shields to drown out his cries. Zeus matured in silence, waiting for the moment the world would change again. Zeus grew not as a frightened child, but as a storm gathering strength behind distant clouds. He watched the world ruled by fear. He listened to the whispers of Gaia, who still remembered the weight of injustice. And he understood something his father never had. Power taken by force is never secure. When Zeus reached maturity, he did not rush into battle. He chose patience, strategy. He approached the Titaness Metis, goddess of wisdom and cunning, and together they devised a plan. Metis prepared a potion, subtle, invisible, unstoppable. Zeus returned to Cronus disguised, offering the drink in service. Cronus swallowed it without suspicion. Moments passed. Then the Titan king began to tremble. A violent convulsion overtook him, and from his mouth erupted the stone he had swallowed years before. Then Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, Poseidon, alive, unbroken, furious. The siblings stood together for the first time, united not by fear, but by purpose. And thus began the Titanomachy, the war that would decide the fate of the cosmos. For 10 years the universe shook. Mountains split open, seas rose into walls of water, the sky burned with lightning. Titans clashed against gods in battles so vast they reshaped the earth itself. But the Olympians were outmatched, until Zeus remembered the forgotten prisoners. Deep within Tartarus, the Cyclopes and the Hecatoncheires still languished. Zeus descended into the abyss and freed them. Grateful and fierce, the Cyclopes forged weapons worthy of revolution. For Zeus, the thunderbolt. For Poseidon, the trident. For Hades, the helm of invisibility. The balance shifted. With thunder in his hand, Zeus became the storm incarnate. Lightning rained from the heavens. The Titans staggered beneath its fury. The Hecatoncheires hurled mountains like stones. And one by one, the Titans fell. Cronus was defeated. The rebels were cast into Tartarus, deeper than the underworld, darker than night, sealed behind gates of bronze. The Hecatoncheires became their eternal wardens. Silence returned. The war was over. The brothers gathered to divide the cosmos. They did not fight for it. They cast lots. Zeus claimed the sky, Poseidon the sea, Hades the underworld. The earth itself would belong to all. And high above the mortal world, upon the peaks of Mount Olympus, a new order rose. The Olympian age had begun. Zeus sat upon a throne of cloud and storm, not merely king, but lawgiver, judge, guardian of cosmic balance. But peace among gods is rarely permanent, for power invites rivalry, desire invites jealousy, and Olympus was filled with both. Hera, queen of the gods, possessed unmatched dignity and unmatched fury when betrayed. Poseidon's temper churned like the seas he ruled. Ares thirsted for battle without strategy. Athena valued wisdom above brute force. And Zeus desired often and widely. From these desires came new generations of gods, some born in love, some in secrecy, some in defiance. And among them, one birth would shake Olympus itself. For Zeus learned of a prophecy that Metis, the very goddess who helped him win his throne, would bear a child greater than its father. The words echoed like an old wound. He remembered Cronus. He remembered fear. And so, in a moment of terrible irony, Zeus swallowed Metis whole. But fate is not so easily devoured. Time passed. Then one day, Zeus felt a splitting pain inside his skull. The agony grew unbearable. He called upon Hephaestus to strike his head with an axe. The blade fell. The sky rang with thunder. And from Zeus's forehead sprang Athena, fully grown, armored, radiant with wisdom and warcraft. Not a destroyer of order, but its strategist. The Olympians now stood complete, but their rule would not be uncontested. For beneath the earth, something ancient was still watching. Something that remembered the fall of Uranus. Something that remembered the fall of Cronus. And it would soon rise. Peace on Olympus did not last. For beneath the earth, in the deep and wounded memory of Gaia, resentment still burned. She had watched her husband fall. She had watched her son fall. And now she watched her grandchildren rule. The cycle of rebellion had not ended. It had only changed hands. From her anger and the depths of Tartarus, Gaia brought forth a final weapon. Typhon. A creature so vast, his head brushed the stars. His body coiled like a mountain range. From his shoulders erupted 100 serpent heads, each hissing with voices of chaos. Fire flashed from his eyes. Storm winds followed his breath. He was not merely a monster. He was vengeance given form. When Typhon rose, Olympus shook. The gods, for the first time since the Titanomachy, felt fear. Some fled to distant lands. Some disguised themselves as animals to escape his wrath. But Zeus did not run. Lightning gathered in his hands once more. The sky darkened. Thunder rolled like drums of war. Their battle tore across the world. Typhon hurled mountains. Zeus answered with storms that split the earth open. Seas boiled. The horizon burned. At one terrible moment, Typhon managed to overpower Zeus, tearing the sinews from his hands and feet and leaving the king of gods helpless. The world trembled. Had the cycle already begun again? But Hermes and Pan, swift and clever, stole back Zeus's strength. Restored, the thunder god rose one final time. He unleashed a storm unlike any before. Bolt after bolt crashed down until Typhon fell. Zeus buried him beneath Mount Etna, where his fury still smolders as fire and smoke. Order had survived, but it had come at a cost. The gods had learned something. They were powerful, but not invincible. And while Olympus secured its throne, another story quietly unfolded below. for humanity had begun to walk the earth. Some say it was Prometheus, a titan who had sided with Zeus, who shaped mankind from clay. He formed them in the image of the gods, upright, curious, thinking creatures. Athena breathed life into them. They opened their eyes to a world still young. But Zeus did not trust them. Humans were unpredictable, ambitious, fragile, and so he withheld from them the greatest gift of the gods: fire. Without it, humanity shivered in darkness. They could not forge tools. They could not cook food. They could not build civilization. Prometheus watched them struggle, and compassion stirred within him. Against the will of Olympus, he climbed to the heavens, stole flame from the chariot of the sun, and carried it hidden within a hollow fennel stalk back to earth. When the first spark touched human hands, everything changed. Fire gave warmth. Fire gave craft. Fire gave independence. Zeus saw the glow from afar, and his fury was absolute. He chained Prometheus to a lonely mountain peak. Each day, an eagle descended to devour his liver. Each night, it grew back. The punishment would last for ages. Yet even in torment, Prometheus did not beg. He endured, because humanity now carried the flame. But Zeus had not finished his lesson. If humans desired divine gifts, they would also inherit divine consequences. He ordered Hephaestus to craft a being of breathtaking beauty. From clay once more came life. Her name was Pandora. The gods gave her many gifts: charm, curiosity, grace, persuasion, and one sealed jar. She was told never to open it. But curiosity is not easily contained, and fate does not whisper without being heard. One quiet day, unable to resist, Pandora lifted the lid. From within burst sickness, envy, greed, war, aging, death. Sorrows too many to name poured into the world like a storm unleashed. She slammed the jar shut, but it was too late. Only one thing remained inside: hope. And so humanity entered a new age, an age not of innocence, but of struggle. Yet in struggle, something extraordinary begins to form: courage, ambition, heroism. For if the gods would test mankind, mankind would answer with legend. And soon, heroes would rise whose names would echo through eternity. As suffering spread across the world, humanity did not collapse. It adapted. Villages formed beside rivers. Fires burned through long nights. Stories were told beneath starlit skies. Stories of gods who ruled above them and forces they barely understood. And from these early generations, something remarkable began to appear. Not gods, not monsters, but heroes. The first among them to shake the world was Perseus. He was born of Zeus and Danae, a mortal princess locked away by her father, who had been warned that his grandson would one day destroy him. Fate, once again, could not be sealed behind walls. Zeus descended in a shower of golden light, and Perseus was born. Cast into the sea as an infant with his mother, he survived. He grew strong not in palaces, but in hardship. When a cruel king demanded the head of Medusa, the Gorgon whose gaze turned living men to stone, Perseus did not refuse. He accepted. But Medusa was no simple monster. Once beautiful, she had been transformed into a creature of serpents and stone through divine cruelty. Anyone who looked into her eyes became lifeless rock. Her lair was filled with statues, warriors frozen in their final terror. Perseus did not face her blindly. Athena guided him. Hermes armed him. A mirrored shield, a curved blade, a bag to carry what should not be seen. He walked among the stone corpses without meeting her gaze. He listened for the hiss of serpents. And in a single swift motion, guided by reflection, not sight, he struck. Medusa's head fell. From her severed neck sprang Pegasus, the winged horse, and Chrysaor, born of immortal blood. Even in death, myth gave birth to wonder. Perseus would go on to rescue Andromeda from a sea monster, turning the beast to stone with Medusa's gaze. Thus began a pattern. Heroes did not simply fight monsters, they reshaped destiny. But no hero embodied endurance like Heracles. Born of Zeus and the mortal Alcmene, Heracles carried divine strength from infancy. Hera, enraged by Zeus's betrayal, sought to destroy him from the beginning. She sent serpents to his cradle. The infant crushed them with his bare hands. Yet strength could not protect him from divine cruelty. Driven mad by Hera's influence, Heracles committed an unthinkable act, one that shattered his soul. When clarity returned, guilt consumed him. To atone, he accepted 12 impossible labors, not quests for glory, but punishments. He strangled the Nemean lion whose hide no weapon could pierce. He slew the Hydra whose heads multiplied when cut. He captured the golden-horned stag that could outrun arrows. He descended into the underworld itself and returned alive. Each labor was more than a test of muscle. It was a test of endurance, of humility, of the will to continue despite shame. And when his trials were complete, Heracles did not simply die. He ascended, becoming a god among the very beings who had tormented him. But not all heroes were born of Zeus. Some rose through wit alone. Theseus, Prince of Athens, chose to confront the terror haunting Crete, the Minotaur, a half-man, half-bull creature trapped within a labyrinth so complex no one who entered ever returned. The labyrinth was not merely stone. It was confusion made architecture, fear made structure. With only a sword and a thread given by Ariadne, Theseus descended into twisting darkness, step by step, breath by breath, until he found the beast. The battle echoed through stone corridors, and when the Minotaur fell, Theseus followed the thread back to light. The monster was dead, but the maze remained, for every generation would face its own labyrinth, its own beast, its own test of courage. As heroes rose, the gods watched, sometimes aiding, sometimes interfering, always influencing. For in Greek myth, mortal and divine were never separate worlds. They were threads woven tightly together, and soon that weaving would pull all of Greece into its greatest war. Long before Troy would burn, another voyage tested the limits of mortal ambition. Jason, rightful heir to the throne of Iolcus, was raised in secret. His uncle had stolen the crown and ruled in fear of prophecy, a warning that a man wearing one sandal would return to claim what was his. Years later, Jason arrived at the palace, one sandal lost while helping an old woman cross a river. That woman had been Hera in disguise. Fate had come knocking. The usurping king did not deny Jason outright. Instead, he offered a challenge designed to kill him. Retrieve the golden fleece, a sacred object guarded at the edge of the known world in the distant land of Colchis. The fleece was not merely treasure, it was legitimacy, divine favor woven into gold. And so Jason gathered the greatest heroes of his age: Heracles, Orpheus, whose music could tame beasts, Castor and Pollux, Atalanta, warriors and legends aboard a single ship, the Argo. Thus, they became the Argonauts. Their journey was not a straight path across calm waters. They faced harpies that stole food from a cursed king. They navigated the clashing rocks, colossal stones that smashed together without warning, crushing ships that dared pass between them. Through wit and divine favor, they survived. When at last they reached Colchis, King Aeetes did not hand over the fleece. He set impossible tasks: yoke fire-breathing bulls, plow a field with them, sow dragon's teeth that would sprout into armed warriors. Jason would have died had it not been for Medea. Daughter of the king, sorceress, priestess of Hecate, she fell in love with Jason, whether through fate, magic, or tragic choice. She gave him enchanted ointment to resist flame. She told him how to defeat the warriors born from dragon's teeth by turning them against each other. And when the fleece was finally within reach, she helped him steal it. Jason claimed victory, but it was built upon betrayal. They fled together, pursued across the sea, and in time, Jason would betray Medea in return. In Greek myth, glory often walks beside tragedy. Love often walks beside ruin. While Jason sailed home with stolen gold, another story unfolded among the gods. A wedding was being celebrated, the union of Peleus and Thetis, a mortal king and a sea nymph. All the gods were invited, all except one: Eris, goddess of discord. Uninvited, she arrived anyway and tossed a golden apple into the gathering. Upon it were carved the words, "For the fairest." Immediately, Hera claimed it. So did Athena. So did Aphrodite. The dispute threatened to divide Olympus itself. Zeus refused to judge between them. Instead, he chose a mortal: Paris, Prince of Troy, a shepherd unaware of his royal blood. The goddesses appeared before him, and each offered a bribe. Hera promised power, dominion over kingdoms. Athena promised wisdom and victory in war. Aphrodite promised the love of the most beautiful woman in the world. Paris chose Aphrodite, and in doing so, sealed the fate of nations. For the most beautiful woman alive was Helen, Queen of Sparta, wife of King Menelaus. Aphrodite kept her promise. Helen fell in love with Paris, whether by persuasion, enchantment, or destiny itself. And she left Sparta. She left her husband. She sailed to Troy. The insult was unbearable. Menelaus called upon the oath once sworn by all of Helen's former suitors, a vow to defend her marriage. Kings answered, warriors gathered, ships filled the horizon. 1,000 sails caught the wind, and the greatest war of myth was set into motion. The Trojan War would last 10 years, 10 years of blood, of divine interference, of pride and prophecy colliding on the battlefield. And among the warriors who sailed toward Troy was one whose name would outlive them all: Achilles. Achilles was not born like other men. His mother, Thetis, was a sea nymph, ancient, luminous, and bound to tides older than Olympus itself. His father, Peleus, was mortal. From birth, Achilles carried something impossible within him: glory and doom. Some traditions say Thetis dipped him into the river Styx, the waters of the underworld granting invulnerability. She held him by the heel, and where her fingers touched, the water did not. A single point, a single weakness. Whether myth or metaphor, the truth remained the same. Achilles was nearly unstoppable. When the Greek fleet gathered at Aulis, winds refused to blow. The army waited, ships idle, tension rising. The seer Calchas revealed the reason. Artemis demanded sacrifice. Agamemnon, king of kings, had offended the goddess, and to appease her, he was told to sacrifice his daughter, Iphigenia. The choice shattered him, but ambition outweighed mercy. Some say Artemis spared the girl at the last moment, replacing her with a deer. Others say the sacrifice was real. Either way, the wind returned, the fleet sailed, and Troy awaited. For 9 years, the war raged in stalemate. Skirmishes, raids, blood spilled beneath the walls. The gods chose sides. Hera and Athena despised Troy. Aphrodite protected Paris. Apollo sent plagues upon the Greeks. Poseidon shifted the tides of battle. The war was never merely mortal. It was divine chess. And the most dangerous piece on the board was Achilles. When he entered battle, Trojans fled. His armor flashed like fire beneath the sun. His spear never missed. His rage was surgical, precise. Until pride intervened. Agamemnon, greedy and insecure, claimed Briseis, a captive woman awarded to Achilles. It was more than theft. It was insult. Achilles withdrew from battle. He would not fight for a king who dishonored him. Without Achilles, the Greeks faltered. Hector, prince of Troy, noble, disciplined, devoted to his city, pushed the Greeks back to their ships. Unlike Paris, Hector fought not for vanity, but for duty, for wife, for child, for Troy. The war shifted. Greek morale shattered. Patroclus, closest companion of Achilles, could not endure watching their comrades fall. He begged Achilles for his armor. Achilles agreed, but warned him not to pursue glory too far. Patroclus entered battle wearing the armor of Achilles, and for a moment, the Trojans believed the great warrior had returned. But Apollo struck him from behind. Hector delivered the final blow. Patroclus fell, and with him, the restraint of Achilles. When the news reached him, something broke. Not pride, not anger, something deeper. Grief turned into fury. Fury turned into annihilation. Achilles returned to battle like a force of nature unleashed. He slaughtered without mercy. The river Scamander overflowed with bodies. Even the river god rose against him, choking him with rising waters. But Achilles pressed on, until at last he faced Hector outside the gates of Troy. Hector stood alone. He knew the outcome. He asked only that his body be returned to his family. Achilles refused. The duel was swift. Hector fell, and Achilles, blinded by rage, tied the prince's body to his chariot and dragged it before the walls. Troy watched in horror. Even the gods looked away. But grief does not burn forever. One night, King Priam of Troy, old, broken, desperate, entered the Greek camp alone. He knelt before Achilles. He kissed the hands that had killed his son. And he begged for Hector's body, for dignity, for mercy. In that moment, Achilles saw not an enemy, but a father, and something human returned to him. He wept. he returned Hector's body. For a brief moment, war paused. Funeral fires replaced battle cries. But fate had not finished its design, for Achilles himself could not escape prophecy. Paris, guided by Apollo, loosed an arrow. It struck Achilles in the heel, the single place untouched by immortal waters. The greatest warrior of the age fell, not defeated by strength, but by destiny. Yet Troy still stood, and the Greeks, exhausted and desperate, would soon turn to cunning over courage. A wooden horse, a hollow deception, and the final act of the war would begin. For 10 years, Troy had stood. Its walls, said to be built by Poseidon himself, had endured siege, fire, and countless assaults. The Greeks had lost heroes. The Trojans had buried sons. Neither side could break the other, until cunning replaced force. It was Odysseus, king of Ithaca, master of strategy, who conceived the plan. Not a battering ram, not a final charge, but deception. The Greeks would build a massive wooden horse, towering, hollow, seemingly abandoned. Inside, hidden in darkness, would wait their finest warriors. The rest of the army would pretend to sail away, leaving the horse behind as an offering. When dawn broke and the Trojans saw the empty shore, disbelief turned to celebration. The enemy had fled. The war was over. Only one voice warned them: Laocoon, a priest of Troy. He hurled his spear at the horse and cried, "Beware of Greeks bearing gifts!" The spear struck. It shuddered, but fate had already chosen its path. From the sea rose two serpents, monstrous, coiling, unstoppable. They crushed Laocoon and his sons before the eyes of the city. The sign was misread, the warning silenced. The horse was dragged inside the gates. Night fell. Celebration turned to sleep. And within the belly of the beast, men waited, breathing softly, hands on blades, hearts pounding. When the moon reached its height, the hidden warriors emerged. They opened the gates. The Greek fleet, which had only hidden beyond sight, returned. Troy woke not to victory, but to fire. Homes burned, temples fell, children screamed, warriors cut down in alleyways. The city that had endured a decade collapsed in a single night. Priam was slain at his altar. Cassandra's warnings went unheard to the very end. And Andromache watched her world crumble around her. The age of heroes ended in ashes. Helen was reclaimed. Whether she had loved Paris or been enchanted remains a mystery. But she returned to Sparta. The war was over. Yet for many, peace would not follow. For the gods do not forget pride. And Poseidon had taken offense. Odysseus had angered him. During the sack of Troy, Odysseus and his men encountered the Cyclops Polyphemus, a giant, one-eyed shepherd. Stranded in his cave, trapped behind a boulder, Odysseus devised a plan. He gave the Cyclops wine, told him his name was Nobody, and when the monster slept, he drove a sharpened stake into his single eye. Blinded and roaring, Polyphemus called for help. "Who has hurt you?" the other Cyclopses shouted. "Nobody!" he screamed, and they left him. Odysseus escaped beneath the bellies of sheep, but as his ship sailed away, pride overtook him. He shouted his real name, declared his victory. Polyphemus was no ordinary monster. He was the son of Poseidon. The sea god heard his son's cry and swore Odysseus would pay. Thus began a journey meant to last weeks, but stretched into 10 years. Odysseus and his crew drifted from one peril to another. They encountered the Lotus Eaters, whose fruit erased memory and desire for home. They met Aeolus, keeper of winds, who gifted Odysseus a bag containing every storm, only for his curious crew to open it and unleash chaos just within sight of Ithaca. They faced the Laestrygonians, giants who crushed ships like toys. One by one, Odysseus's fleet diminished, until only a single vessel remained. Then came Circe, enchantress, daughter of the sun. She transformed his men into swine. But Odysseus, protected by divine herbs, resisted her magic. Instead of becoming her victim, he became her guest. For a year they remained, time slipping like water through fingers. Yet destiny called him onward. To return home, he was told, he must journey somewhere no living man willingly goes: the underworld. And so Odysseus sailed not across water, but into shadow, into the land of the dead, where spirits whispered of fate still waiting, and where he would learn something that would change his path forever. The entrance to the underworld was not marked by gates of iron. It was marked by silence. Odysseus sailed to the edge of the world, where the sun's warmth faded and the air itself felt heavy. There, following Circe's instructions, he dug a trench and poured offerings: milk, honey, wine, dark blood. The spirits rose, not walking, not speaking at first, but drifting, whispering. He saw warriors he had known. He saw his fallen comrade Elpenor begging for burial rites. And then he saw Achilles, the greatest of the Greeks, no longer radiant, no longer untouchable, a shade among shades. Odysseus praised him, told him how men still spoke his name with awe. Achilles answered with a truth colder than death: better to live as a servant among the living than to rule among the dead. Glory fades. Life is precious, even flawed, even fragile. Odysseus also spoke with Tiresias, the blind prophet. The seer warned him he would return home, but not easily. If his men harmed the sacred cattle of Helios, the sun god, none would survive. Odysseus listened, but he could not control fate or hunger. Back upon the sea, the journey continued. They passed the island of the Sirens, creatures whose voices promised knowledge, love, answers to every regret. Their song was irresistible. Ships that sailed too near never sailed away. Odysseus ordered his men to plug their ears with wax, but he wished to hear it, to understand it, to test himself. He had them bind him tightly to the mast. When the song began, it was not monstrous. It was beautiful. It spoke of home, of rest, of being understood completely. Odysseus screamed to be released. He begged. He ordered. But his crew obeyed his earlier command. They rowed on, and the song faded behind them. Temptation survived. Barely. Next came a choice no captain should ever face. Two horrors guarded a narrow strait. On one side, Charybdis, a monstrous whirlpool that swallowed entire ships into the abyss. On the other, Scylla, a six-headed creature who snatched sailors from decks with lightning speed. Odysseus could not avoid both. He chose Scylla. Better to lose a few than all. As they passed, 6 men were torn screaming into the air. Odysseus heard their cries long after the sea fell silent. Leadership is not always heroic. Sometimes it is unbearable. At last, exhausted and starving, they reached the island of Helios. The sacred cattle grazed there, golden, untouched. Odysseus warned his men. He repeated Tiresias's prophecy. But storms trapped them. Supplies dwindled. Hunger sharpened into madness. While Odysseus slept, they slaughtered the cattle. When the storm cleared and they set sail once more, Zeus answered. A bolt of lightning split the mast. The ship shattered. Every man was thrown into the sea. All drowned. All except one. Odysseus clung to wreckage and drifted alone, washed ashore on the island of Calypso. She was no monster, no storm. She was gentleness, comfort, immortality offered as escape from suffering. She loved him, offered him eternal youth if he would stay. Forget Ithaca, forget hardship, forget mortality. For 7 years he remained, but each day he sat upon the shore, staring at the horizon, longing. Immortality without home is exile. Eventually the gods intervened. Athena, who had always favored him, pleaded his case. Zeus ordered Calypso to release him. She obeyed, with sorrow. Odysseus built a raft and sailed once more. Poseidon, still enraged, smashed it with storms. But this time, Odysseus did not boast. He endured, clinging to survival with nothing left but will. At last, he reached the land of the Phaeacians. There, for the first time in years, he told his story. And when he finished, they carried him home. Not in glory, not in triumph, but in quiet return. Ithaca awaited, but home had changed. Ithaca had not stood still in Odysseus's absence. Years had passed. Rumors of his death had spread like winter frost. And within his halls, men had gathered. Suitors, dozens of them, feasting, drinking, wearing his wealth, courting his wife. Penelope, queen of Ithaca, had endured for 20 years, not with swords, not with armies, but with patience, with intelligence, with refusal. Each day she wove a burial shroud for Odysseus's aged father, promising to choose a new husband when it was complete. Each night she unraveled it, hope thread by thread. Their son, Telemachus, had grown from infant to young man under the shadow of absence. He longed not only for his father's return, but for proof he had truly existed. For years, Athena had watched over him. Now she guided him toward courage. When Odysseus finally reached Ithaca's shores, he did not return as king. He returned as a beggar. Athena cloaked him in age and dust. He entered his own home unseen, unrecognized, listening, watching, measuring the rot within his halls. He saw servants who had betrayed him. He saw suitors mocking his name. He saw Penelope still holding herself with quiet strength. He tested loyalty. First among the swineherd Eumaeus, who welcomed the disguised stranger without question. Then among others. And slowly, father revealed himself to son. Telemachus stared in disbelief, then in tears, then in resolve. Together, they planned. Penelope, weary of waiting, announced a contest. Whoever could string Odysseus's great bow and shoot an arrow through 12 axe heads would win her hand. One by one, the suitors tried. They strained. They cursed. They failed. The beggar asked for a turn. Laughter filled the hall. But Penelope, something stirring in her heart, allowed it. Odysseus took the bow, turned it in his hands, and with effortless grace, strung it. The room fell silent. He drew the arrow. It flew clean through all 12 axes. And then he stood tall, no longer bent, no longer hidden. Odysseus had returned. The doors were barred. The reckoning began. Telemachus at his side, faithful servants behind him. Arrows struck with deadly precision. The suitors begged, promised gifts, offered apologies. But justice, long delayed, does not soften easily. One by one, they fell. The hall ran red. And when it was finished, silence filled the room that had once echoed with arrogance. Penelope did not rush into his arms. She tested him, asked him to move their marriage bed. Odysseus grew angry, for the bed was carved from a living olive tree, rooted into the earth itself. It could not be moved. Only he knew that. Only he. And so she knew. He was home. Not a god, not a legend, but a man who had endured the impossible. They embraced, not as youthful lovers, but as survivors. The long war, the long wandering, the long waiting had ended. But the age of heroes was fading. The generation born of gods and destiny began to pass. No new Achilles would rise. No new Heracles would ascend. The world was shifting, from mythic to mortal, from epic to ordinary. Yet the gods remained, watching, influencing, fading slowly from center stage. For as centuries passed, philosophers would question them. Empires would reshape belief. Rome would adopt and rename them. Zeus would become Jupiter, Hera, Juno, Athena, Minerva. The stories would change language, but not meaning. Because Greek mythology was never simply about gods. It was about power taken and lost, about pride and consequence, about love so strong it destroyed cities, about grief so deep it reshaped men, about fate and the desperate human attempt to defy it. From chaos to Olympus, from titans to heroes, from fire stolen to cities burned, the myths trace the arc of existence itself. Creation, conflict, loss, return. And though temples crumble and marble erodes, the stories endure. In art, in literature, in every tale of ambition and downfall, in every hero who rises despite knowing the cost. Because in the beginning, there was chaos. And from chaos came gods. And from gods came stories. And from stories came us. After Odysseus reclaimed his throne, something subtle began to change. The great heroes were gone. The sons of gods aged. The age of prophecy grew quiet. The world did not end. It evolved. Cities grew larger, armies became organized, philosophers began asking new questions. Thales searched for the substance of the universe. Heraclitus spoke of change as the only constant. Socrates questioned everything, even the gods. For the first time, myth was not rejected, but examined. Zeus did not vanish. Athena did not crumble. But their thunder softened. Their presence shifted. They became symbols, archetypes, embodiments of forces within the human mind. Rome would later adopt them, renaming, reshaping, retelling. Yet the core remained, because mythology is not destroyed by time. It transforms. The Titans still represent rebellion. Prometheus still represents defiance. Achilles still represents glory and fragility. Odysseus still represents endurance. Pandora still represents curiosity and consequence. These stories survive because they are not about ancient Greece. They are about us. Every generation has its Cronus, clinging to power. Every era has its Prometheus, daring to challenge it. Every civilization faces its Troy, built by pride, destroyed by it. Every human being faces a labyrinth and hopes to find the thread back home. Greek mythology endures not because we believe Zeus throws lightning, but because we understand rage, because we understand jealousy, because we understand love powerful enough to launch 1,000 ships. The gods were never just in the sky. They were in the storms within us. And though temples crumble, though marble cracks, though centuries pass and languages change, the stories remain. In books, in paintings, in films, in the quiet voice of a parent telling a child about heroes and monsters. Because in the beginning, there was chaos. And from chaos came creation. And from creation came conflict. And from conflict came meaning. And as long as humans search for meaning, the gods of Olympus will never truly fade. They will simply wait, in story, in symbol, in memory. And perhaps in the next storm you hear rolling across the sky.